Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our 2 newly released books, Football, a Love Story, and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books. Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you a football game plan special presentation. A lot of times you hear people say the NFL needs a developmental league, but we think at Football Game Plan, the NFL actually can expand by 4 or even 5 teams. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video with the help of our Football Game Plan analysts, Teron Davenport, Gene Clemens, Chris James, and special guest Brandon Howard of Sports Talk Florida. We expanded the NFL by 5 more teams. So we're going to announce these cities and our rosters, and we're going to start down south where Gene Clemens picks his team in a certain city in the Sunshine State. Before we get to the expansion teams, I think it's important to let you guys know how these rosters came about. Now, the purpose of this entire exercise is to debunk the myth that there is a serious talent crisis and shortage in the NFL, and that's just not the case. In actuality, there are more NFL talent type players out there than there are spots on rosters, and as we unveil our teams, you'll start to see that. Now, how we went about the process of selecting teams, we looked at 3 things. Number 1, players that are not currently in the NFL, players that are currently on NFL teams as practice squads, and players that play in other leagues.
My expansion team, the Orlando Wave. With a head coach like Rich Rodriguez and an offensive coordinator like Lane Kiffin, you want to make sure you have a quarterback that's dynamic, who can beat you with his legs and his arms. I don't only have 1, but I have 2. My starter would be Terrell Pryor. My backup would be Taj Boyd. I think that both of these young men have an opportunity to be good to great NFL quarterbacks if they were ever given the opportunity to develop in a pro-style system or in a system that takes advantage of their athletic abilities while also teaching them the game as passers. I think both Rodriguez and Kiffin are great at doing those things. You look at the overall composition of our team, you'll find a lot of veteran presence, but you'll also find youth. It's very interesting to me that Pryor, even though he's been around the league for years now, is only 25 years old. Whereas you have some of these other quarterbacks who just came into the league 2 and 3 years ago, they're already 25. That tells me he's got a lot of room to grow. You look at other young men like Mike Golick Jr., who's still waiting for his opportunity on the offensive line. You pair him with veterans like Eric Williams. Shane McDermott is another young guy who also knows his way around the offensive line. You put those guys together, veteran wide receivers like Terrell Owens, Reggie Wayne, mixed with young, athletic, promising wide receivers like Deron Carter, you have yourself a great mixing of a receiving core. I've got veterans as running backs, Ray Rice, Julius Randle, guys who, as a guy who was just cut by the Cowboys and was their starting running back. Now he's without a job. He needs to come and play for Orlando. But I also add in there young guys like James Wilder Jr., who I believe can be a great third down back, short yardage back, but also a change of pace when you have a scat back going. And then you have a guy like Monty Ball, who I believe was never really given a true chance in Denver and needs another opportunity to show that he can play ball. Defensively, you got guys like Mount Cody on the inside, Devin Steele, who proved last year that he's not just a good story, but a good football player. And a wild card as a kick returner, Chris Rainey, a guy who's been successful in high school, college. There's no reason why he couldn't be successful in the NFL if he was given the opportunity.
The real hip-hop
in the States. And obviously there's ones that come to mind from the South, even the North, whether it's Florida, Pennsylvania, Louisiana. But there's one that comes to mind that has been immortalized in a lot of different movies and television shows, and that's the state of Texas. Interesting fact about the city that I chose, it is the largest city by population in the country that does not have a professional franchise. And that is Austin, Texas, the 11th largest city in the country. The Austin Rangers, as I've named them, sit in a hotbed for football where we have the University of Texas, the Longhorns there. We have high school football, state championship caliber teams coming out of the city of Austin, and just a rich tradition of football that people aren't familiar with. The city itself also has great festivals and is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So I chose a city that I thought really would love to have a team, much like we've seen with Oklahoma City having the Thunder, and also a team that's a little past the Mississippi. It seems like all of our professional sports, especially football, are east of the Mississippi. So we'll have some games that are available for the 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time slot when we have Austin added to the expansion. I think that they would be a prime spot for a new team to come into the league. So when organizing my team, I had to think, what do I want to put out there? What type of unit do I want to put together? I'm going to start with my coaching staff. When I wanted to select a head coach, I wanted a guy who had some of the traits that I think are important for a coach. Obviously, having tenure and being a championship caliber coach on some level is important. So that's one. Number two, having the temperament to be able to handle grown men who are making more money than you in a lot of respects, in a lot of situations. That's two. And number three, having the mindset where you can adjust and adapt to different situations is very important. And that's why my head coaching choice is Urban Meyer. I think that he's been able to prove that he's grown programs on the collegiate level. He does have the mindset to be able to handle men and treat them like men. And we've seen from moving from program to program that he's able to adjust even with whatever's on the roster. That in line, his offensive coordinator in this situation is going to be a guy he's familiar with, that can run the offense that he wants and has been successful in his own right. That's Dan Mullen. I like a guy who is able to develop quarterbacks even if they're not doing the quote-unquote traditional stuff quarterbacks are doing, staying just in the pocket. He's been able to make quarterbacks better decision makers overall. My defense coordinator is actually another guy from the collegiate ranks, Brent Venables, out of Clemson. I like the guy's energy, also his schemes, and the fact that he never will sit back and let a team march down the field to beat him. He's going to make sure that you have to go against pressure, makes you make decisions, and I think that that's the style that I can truly appreciate from a defensive standpoint. As far as my offensive player, or in this particular situation, players, this is the quarterback position, which has been very important across the NFL. The highest paid position for a reason, very protected in some respects, but in discussions with the rest of the football game plan team in the past, we wondered if certain styles of offense could work on the NFL level. Running more of this read option, but also power option based offense, I've selected not one or two, but 3 quarterbacks and an emergency guy that could run this system. So my starting quarterback is Tim Tebow. The familiarity that he has with the coaching staff, as well as the type of offense that's going to be run, and the fact that we know that in crunch time, Tim Tebow responds the way you're supposed to respond. He is my starter. His backup is Blake Sims. I like the guy's tenacity, and while he's not the most polished passer, he can learn under the tutelage of a Dan Mullen, who has worked with guys like Dak Prescott and make him a better passer. And again, he's not going to be called into action unless necessary. And my number 3 guy is a guy whose athleticism is unrivaled, a guy who had to switch positions to get into the league, and that is Nick Marshall out of Auburn. He has a lot of similarities and familiarity with running an offense of this caliber and type, and I think also working with a guy like Dan Mullen can be beneficial. On the defensive side of the ball, there's one position that I really focused on, and it's a position that I'm proud of, and I think Ben Venables would be proud of as well. That's the middle linebacking core. Be running the 3-4 scheme, so I'd have 2 starting middle linebackers. Those guys are Andrew Jackson out of Western Kentucky and Tyler Starr out of South Dakota. I also have as my backup middle linebackers Daryl Sharp out of Miami and Nico Johnson out of Alabama. That unit and those guys, I think that they're heady, they're tackling machines, and they're playmakers. They will be the coaches on the field for that defensive unit, and I feel comfortable with these guys heading up my team as my captains on each side of the ball.
How's it going, football fans? My name is Brandon Howard, and I decided to place my NFL expansion franchise in Portland, Oregon. And the reason I chose Portland, Oregon is that this is a rapidly expanding city, believe it or not. They've expanded so quickly that they've had to cut down a lot of trees just to accommodate their new residents, and they haven't even gotten around to pulling stumps out of the ground. So they've gotten the nickname Stumptown, and I decided to go ahead and bless Stumptown with a NFL franchise because I believe that they could certainly accommodate one. And I went with the nickname Knights. So I went with the Portland Knights. That's just paying homage to Nike CEO and founder Phil Knight, who is a Portland, Oregon native. So I thought that maybe he could bless us with some cool uniforms. I'm pretty sure he would. And also, if you can see behind me here, this is the logo. If you're a sci-fi geek like me, you already know what this is. So also, as far as my head coach is concerned, I would go with Gus Malzahn. I believe that some of the lead ISOs that he runs and some of the power run schemes that he has, that would be an exciting thing for a lot of football fans to watch on a Sunday. So that's why he would be my head coach. Also, my offensive coordinator would be Norm Chow. I love what he does in terms of dealing with players who are versatile. He doesn't penalize those players for being versatile. He uses that versatility to his advantage. So that's something I really like about him. And I also like some of the route combinations that he has. So that would be something that I would certainly look forward to as well. And my defensive coordinator would be Luke Fickell. Due to his experience coaching players in a 3-3-5, I would love to run that defense. I believe it lends itself to allowing you to kind of get after the quarterback at so many different levels. So I really think that would be an excellent tool, and I think that Luke Fickell could kind of guide the ship there. Also, as far as my roster, what you'll see on my roster is that it's comprised of players that can wear multiple hats, guys that can do multiple things. I believe in saving roster spots, and I believe too often in the NFL, we don't see players be all that they can be because you have too many coaches that have to fit players into a particular scheme, and so it's a very unfortunate trend that we have right now in the NFL. And I would be hoping to break that trend with guys like Norm Chow and Gus Malzahn. So on my offense, you'll see Dree Archer as my running back, and as well as Storm Johnson. And what I would like to do is run a lot of 3-back formations. You would have Trey Millard as one of the sniffers, one of the up-backs, and also Colt Lyerla as one of the sniffers or the up-backs, and a combination of Storm Johnson as a deep back, and as well as Dree Archer as a deep back. So those guys working off of one another, and you have Colt Lyerla who can play some tight end, fullback. He can play so many different things. Dree Archer who can play running back, wide receiver. He can play in the slot. So I think that those types of players lend itself to offensive continuity, and I believe that this team could have some success fairly early on. As far as my defense is concerned, I would have Dante Moak at one of the spur positions in that 3-3-5, and he's essentially another linebacker, so he's the cleanup man. He's the guy that's coming around making tackles. He'll obviously finish the season with over 100 tackles. Because just coming down in the alley and making plays, just playing freely, see ball, go get ball. And I think that that's, the type of play, that he needs to be successful. So that's pretty much it for the Portland Knights and Stumptown. Thank you very much.
My city is Las Vegas. Head coach is Herm Edwards. Want a high energy guy to kind of get this group of guys who I feel deserve another chance in the league. I want a high energy guy to lead them, and want a veteran coaching staff as well. So we brought in Brian Billick as the offensive coordinator, and we tapped NFL offices, and we brought Ted Cottrell in as a defensive coordinator, former Buffalo Bills coordinator. So basically, just looking at the roster, it's just a collection of guys that I liked either when they were in the NFL or when they were coming out. For example, Casey Pierce is a tight end I really liked out of Kent State. He didn't make it with the Lions for whatever reasons, but that's going to be my starting tight end. My quarterback, Josh Freeman. Hey, listen, man, he was productive in the league, 4,000-yard passer. Whatever happened in Tampa kind of scrambled his eggs, and he just wasn't able to get back into the league and get back into a good situation. But I think he has the talent to play. Looking at some of the guys on the roster, I mean, we got Kenny Cook, a young receiver, Aldrick Robinson, a guy who could stretch the field. It's interesting when you look at the roster and you look at the talent out there. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you know, have experience in the NFL, or guys that I think could do well in the NFL. You take a Devontae Bosby, a corner out of Pittsburgh State, got caught up in the mix with Kansas City, had an injury, and they had to waive him. He's a guy that could definitely play in the league. So that's a solid corner that I have on the roster. Quentin Pointer is another guy I think has a lot of talent. He could play in the league as far as, he's a ball hawk, you know, and he's a guy that could bump inside and cover the slot. So that's somebody else that I put on there. Looking at some of the other defensive backs, Javier Arenas, I'm surprised that he doesn't have a job in the NFL. Return men are always valuable, but in addition to that, he could, you know, cover that slot. So he serves a dual purpose. He fills 2 roster spots. So there's a bunch of guys that we could talk about, anywhere from Samson Steele, who has tried out for a few teams at the center, one of the strongest offensive linemen in the league. I have him. I have DeMarcus Dobbs, a guy who definitely deserves another chance. He bounced around from the Seahawks to 49ers and vice versa. I think that's a really good defensive end. So this roster, for the most part, is built, it's mixed between guys who are veterans, guys who are younger, and just getting the opportunity, like a Rasheed Belly out of Delaware Valley College, small school guy, but he went in with the Eagles and did an excellent job in training camp this past year. So it's a nice mix of guys. Dean Long, the wide receiver out of Maryland as well. So just wanted to put this roster together. I think that we are able to put together some teams that could actually compete, and just to really disprove the myth that there is not enough talent in the NFL.
Now we move on to my squad. We're going to travel down to the southwest part of California. Obviously, I had to go with Los Angeles, and I'm going to name my football team the Los Angeles Express. The reason why I'm bringing it back, because I remember the old USFL days, the LA Express with Steve Young and company. But I like that name because it definitely fits this area. And the reason why I chose Los Angeles is an obvious one. It's the #2 TV capital in the world, so it makes sense to have a football team in Los Angeles. You could probably put 2 in LA like they used to have with the Raiders and the Rams. But when you look at my roster, overall it's about a young football team getting an opportunity. So that's why my roster is mostly filled with guys from the 2014 and 2015 NFL draft class that are undrafted free agents, that were undrafted free agents, and some guys that we saw on the practice squad that needed an opportunity to play on an active roster. And we look at my head coach, Hugh Jackson. I think he does a great job with the Cincinnati Bengals, giving him another head coaching opportunity. I think he would work well with Kirk Ferentz, and what Ferentz has done with that offensive line at Iowa, and defensive coordinator Sean McDermott of the Carolina Panthers, I think would be an ideal fit for what I want to do defensively, that 4-3 defense with the ability to get after the quarterback. So that's my coaching staff. And when you look at my roster, again, offensively and defensively, I want to put together a young team with a lot of athleticism and a lot of speed. And 2 guys that just stand out to me the most that just really need that opportunity. Quarterback Jeff Matthews, obviously, of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, a guy that was in camp with both the Atlanta Falcons and was also on the practice squad with the Indianapolis Colts. And now he's up in Canada doing great things and perhaps leading the Tiger Cats to the Grey Cup. So again, a guy that can play, just needs that opportunity. And defensively, I look at my secondary. I think that's a huge opportunity for these guys like Stanley Jean-Baptiste. You also look at maybe Amon Claiborne from the St. Louis Rams, play with those guys in the preseason. But the one guy that stands out, and I talk about him a lot, is Carlos Fields, the linebacker from Winston-Salem State, who's now with the Washington Redskins and on their practice squad. He needs an opportunity. So I gave those 2 guys from the 2014 class an opportunity to start on my football team. I think they do a great job in bringing the LAX to a championship. So that wraps it up for our plan for expansion of the NFL. And if you enjoyed this exercise and want to participate, hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag FBGP expansion with a link to your Google Doc that shows the team name, the city you picked and why, and your 53-man roster along with coaching staff. And again, we look forward to seeing your submissions.